I want to see her jump on your lap.
You won't do that. She's 200 pounds, man.
Dear God.
We rescued her about 6 years ago. She does jump up on the couch, so snuggle.
All right. Well, if she wants to snuggle in the middle of this, we're wide open.
See that?
I'm perfectly okay with that. This is family friendly, hog friendly podcast.
She may as well be our daughter.
Bam. I'm on the rebroadcaster, just haven't made it over to the live stadium yet. She's the family pet. My doggy's outside. She's enjoying the sunshine. It was free. She was wearing her magic coat for about a week. It was so cold.
Yeah. We got a purple what do you call it? Fleece sweater for her.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, but she's got a lot of fat on her.
Well, she's a 200-pound hog. What now? Is she considered a hog or a potbelly pig?
She's potbelly. She's a mini pig.
She's a mini pig?
Yeah, common misconception is that they stay mini.
200 pounds is mini, man. They can get up to 6.
That or 1,000, some of them. But
oh my gosh.
It's the number one most rehomed pet in the country because people get them and they think they're going to stay small. You can wean them at like 2 or 3 weeks instead of waiting until 8 weeks like you do dogs. Because of that, they're like this big. And so people buy them thinking, oh, it's 8 weeks old and it's, it's the size of a donut. I can put it on the grill. It's not that big a deal.
Kids fell in love with her. You're done.
We don't have any kids. She's our only, her and a rescue dog from Texas. That's about it. I'm getting all these text messages. My phone's going to be blowing up today.
Oh, that's fine.
Sign of productivity.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, man.
That's a good thing. Waiting for stream. We're streaming. I want you to stream onto Facebook. I don't want you just streaming over to Caster.
How do we do that? Is something on mine?
What's that?
Is something on my end I can do?
No. It's not on your end. You stream. No, you're good. It's just maybe everybody's trying to.
It's probably busy this morning.
Yeah. Well, at least I see we're live on YouTube. If Facebook connects later, that's fine. I'm not worried about it. Let's open up YouTube in case people are asking questions there. And then after that, we'll just get this party started because
you got 2 different screens there?
I've got 3.
Dang, high tech.
I've got 3. Yeah. It's so funny. I think I had Billy Black on and he's like, how do you run all that? And I'm like, man, if you can use a GPS, you can do what I'm doing. It's not that big.
Well, most people that have GPSs can't run them either.
That's a story for another day. But yeah, you're right. Well, let's get this party started.
22 bullets just came in.
With 2 bullets?
22s.
Okay.
I had a big squirrel hunt coming up.
Oh, well, we can talk about that too. And we are back. Here I am, Fly Navarro with the No BS World Tour coming at you. It's almost been a full year doing this No BS World Tour. Sitting here with Captain Jamie. How did we pronounce your last name to make sure I get it right?
Just like Julianne Hough. It's Hough, Hough.
H-O-U Hough. Captain Jamie Hough, part of the Redfish Mafia. Captain Jamie, why don't you explain to everybody what the Redfish Mafia is before we get this whole party started?
Redfish Mafia started in 2009. It was basically a Facebook page that we started because people were giving us a hard time about seeing redfish pictures that we were putting up on Facebook and thinking that we were killing all the fish or whatever. So we started this Facebook page as a way to just kind of let people know what they were getting into before they got on the page. Didn't want there to be any misconceptions. So, and of course, we don't kill the redfish that we catch anyway, 99% of the time. But you know how today's society is. You get blamed for stomping on the cat, even if you didn't see one. So,
man, you get blamed for everything lately. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are.
Exactly. So we started Redfish Mafia as just a way for people, like-minded red fishermen, to get together and do stuff. And it became stickers and hats and T-shirts shortly thereafter. And then, I fish competitively. And so I have a team of guys. There's 6 of us total. And we started basically teaming up on tour for the Elite Series. And I think the first year, 6 of us out of 40 takes up 15% of the tour. And we wound up winning 69% of the money. So the way we approached that season worked really well. And since then, some tours have tried to ban working together as individuals and a team. But anyway, that's what it is. It's underground, basically a not really well-known hat and T-shirt company that we try to maintain our credibility by not selling in surf shops and wings. And no offense to Salt Life, but that's not my goal. The end goal is not to be another Salt Life conglomerate, where anybody can just go buy a T-shirt or a hat and they don't even know what it is. So
there was an actual initiation process to be part of the mafia.
Yeah, once you get in, you cannot get out. That's for sure.
La Cosa Nostra.
Right.
Every time you try to get out, they just bring you back in. So tell us, how long have you been fishing redfish professionally?
As a guide for roughly 25 years.
Okay.
And then tournament wise, I started, I think 2010, 2011. So, working on 10 years now. I've only won 2 tournaments, but they happen to be real big ones. So that was a bonus. I think we won, let's see, I won the first IFA, the first Elite Series one-man tournament out of Biloxi in 2014. And then 2015 won the IFA National Championship. But that was not the first tournaments I fished. I started fishing billfish tournaments when I was 18. So,
out of where?
Well, I fished some in South Carolina, but the majority of the billfish tournaments I fished were sailfish tournaments in the Keys.
Okay.
And then that led into taking boats from there, like the Real Quick 3 with Alan Starr. Fished Pirates Cove a couple times, fished Alice Kelly Memorial, Big Rock, and then Turks and Caicos for that first tournament. And then some tournaments in the Bahamas. And I don't know if we're allowed to say it these days, but we actually used to go to Cuba every now and then. Back when you weren't supposed to spend more than $100 a day.
Listen, there's somebody knocking on your door right now.
Yeah, sure. Might be knocking on yours later.
What's his address?
Right.
Yo no hablo inglés.
Right.
Yo no hablo.
Español.
What tell us about your trips to Cuba. How was it back then?
It was cool. We never left the marina. It was just one of those deals where you didn't really tell the U.S. you were leaving and didn't really tell Cuba you got there, just because you couldn't buy enough fuel legally to get back,
Okay. So what was the fishing like?
On and off, that Blue Marlin Blue Marlin fishing has a tendency to get really, really good. It's kind of like Dominican. It's basically the same fishing, but as you well know, it can be zero and it can be off the chain. It's just like anywhere else, it definitely wasn't the best bill fishing I've ever seen. For instance, Venezuela, again, as you all know, I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know.
No. But here's the thing, just so you know, it's not for me. It's for everybody that's listening.
I know.
It's for everybody that's listening. Hey, listen, I get asked all the time, what's your favorite place? Bill fishing. Venezuela, hands down.
Hands down.
Hands down.
And it has a lot to do. It's kind of cool being in a place that's that crazy, first of all. And knowing that because you're doing what you're doing, you're protected in that marina. Makuto that ran the marina right there in Carabaleta, treated everybody like gold. And the people that work there, they know that, they're making more money in that marina than 99% of the population in that country. And they know we're bringing them home food that they can take to feed their families. And, they actually, when I was there with Ryan Higgins, they had a coup while we were there. And, they sent the ambassador home and the whole 9 yards. They locked everything down, and you can see the gunshots on the side of the men in the barrios or whatever. And Makuto actually came down and got weapons off the boat and was firing rounds at banditos in the street. It was kind of crazy, but the bill fishing down there was just stupid good. The most grand slams I've ever seen. Gabby on the post haste, we took her to catch. I think at that point in time she was like the second or third lady to ever catch the royal slam. all the species in 1 year.
Yeah.
We took her to catch her daytime swordfish for her first slam, which was cool. Speedy pulled in next to us, and I think on the way in there they had like 29 or 30 bites.
It's just awesome.
Yeah, the Bud Man. I remember a day when our second mate Elias, that I think everybody pretty much knows him right now because he traveled a lot with Bennett Griffin, who was our cook back then. And Bennett's running boats. I think he ran the chasing for a while. But Elias had 50 boomerang bites in one day on the Budman and caught 25 of them. And that you don't hear about that anywhere else.
No, that place it's amazing.
Yeah.
It truly is. Speaking of the Budman, I talked to Lee Alonso the other day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he called me up and we were just, shooting the shit there and telling stories and him telling me about how good the red fishing is and that I better jump on a plane and fly over to Louisiana.
He's not incorrect at all.
No. I know. I've gone there a couple of times with him. And let me tell you, the red fishing is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's insane. It's getting worse. There's a ton of pressure on those fish and the way they manage the fishery down there. Like South Carolina, for instance, is I guess we're a pre-issue fisheries management, while they're an ex post facto based management system where they're not going to change anything until the numbers go down. Whereas here we try to preempt the numbers going down. But the number, in 10 or 11 years, I've seen the number of guides there, is tenfold what it used to be. And, they keep their 5 fish per person every day. And it used to be called, and you can ask guys like Mark Seppi that's been fishing down there longer than I have. It used to be called Shoreline USA. You go to Delacroix, and every single shoreline you went to, there was redfish. And, you turn the trolling motor on and they would chase the boat because they're curious. They've never seen a bait, never seen a boat. And nowadays it's getting a little harder to find them, especially with the bow fishing. It's taking its toll on them. But it still is hands down the best fish. And I'm a South Carolina guy. I would love to tell you that we have the best red fishery on the planet. Not the case at all. Louisiana is 1,000-fold better than any place I've ever fished one.
Yeah, the red fish in there is amazing. It's one of those things you can spend all day long offshore catching yellowfin, and on the ride in just say, you know what? I feel like redfish tonight. Make one quick little stop and catch 2 or 3 and be on your way.
Exactly. It's the only place that I've ever been late to a weigh-in because we were catching them so good that I one more. Let's just catch one more.
You just wanted to catch another one.
It probably cost me $20,000 that week.
Yeah, but you caught more fish. I
had a blast. I went back the next day, even though I was out of the tournament at that point in time. I went back the next day, and in about 4 hours, I caught 39 on the fly by myself.
Wow.
I wound up breaking the fly rod, trying to put like a 35-inch one in the boat. And, net's gone at that point in time, and trying to get them in the boat. It's a unique place, man. It's definitely the best.
That is, listen, I love Louisiana. There's a reason why they call it the sportsman's paradise.
Absolutely.
And the food.
In the morning and catch a redfish in the afternoon. We're shooting ducks last two Januaries ago. I'm shooting ducks, watching the redfish tailing in the duck pond.
Wow.
Do you pick up the shotgun or you pick up the fly rod? What do you do at that point?
Well, what you do is you throw the fly rod until the first flock comes over.
Exactly.
And then you just put the fly rod down and wait, shoot, and then pick the rod back up.
Yep.
It's really the original home of cast and blast.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think anybody had ever heard of it before they did it down there.
Yeah, I've heard some great stories. I've even heard stories where you're red fishing and shooting hogs.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I was in a pond looking for some fish before a tournament, and the pig was so big, I thought it was a bear swimming through the pond that I was in. And when I say pond, people that aren't familiar have to understand that it's not a closed off pond. It's all marsh, and they refer to big pockets as lakes and little pockets as ponds. So it's not closed off at all. But I know it's a weird way to look at it. Just like they'll say camp, and it's $1 million log cabin in the woods.
That is pretty funny. That's something it took me a little while to understand. I have a few friends from Grand Isle. Oh, we're down at the camp.
Yeah.
And okay, you think, like you said, you think of a shack or something, and next thing you know, you go down there and their camp holds a 58-foot sport fish behind it. It's 5 bedrooms.
Yeah,
it's nicer than most homes.
It's like my buddy Trent said, hey, y'all come stay on the houseboat for the Grand Isle tournament. And that was actually the tournament where I was late for the weigh-in. I ran all the way across to Venice, 42 miles to Red Pass. And I did that 3 days in a row, slick calm. And I get down there to stay at the camp, and it's, a 75-foot barge with a house built on it with hardwood floors, marble countertops, bunk beds, flat screen TV, the whole 9 yards.
The whole 9 yards. Room for everybody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Much room.
Yeah. You sleep 40 people. Easily. And
that literally is the only reason that they call them camps. It's just because they always sleep a lot of people.
That's so true. Now, before we move on, we were talking about the hog hunting, and we were talking about it before we got on the air, but I just want people to know because I can hear the noise in the background, and I want everybody to know is that you actually have a 200-pound pig in the house.
Daisy, look here. Hey, Daisy, want a snack? She's not interested.
She's not interested. For people that are just listening, he turned the camera so we can see his 200-pound potbelly pig.
Yeah, she's a hammer. She was only small for a little while.
Probably about a week.
Yeah, it didn't take much longer than that for her to get big. But we actually don't feed her. We feed her about a cup of food a day.
Really?
Yeah, we give her a half a cup in the morning, a half a cup in the afternoon with a bunch of water. And so she has to drink water to get to the food, and then we let her eat, lettuce and carrots and stuff like that for treats and snacks, and oats, cracked oats.
Do you take her for a walk in the evenings?
We used to take her. Problem now is it's just been acorn season, and so the acorns are everywhere, and you can't go 50 feet without her stopping. When she don't want to do something, you're not going to get her to do it. They're kind of like cats, more so than dogs, whereas everything has to be on their accord. You give them attention when they want it instead of when you want to give them attention. And so, if we try to take her for a walk and there's acorns, you're not going to get her to budge. She's just going to eat all the acorns. Like we get her outside now, and I got to hustle her back in the house after 2 or 3 hours so she doesn't gain so much weight she can't walk down the stairs.
Oh, no, wait a second. You got her walking up and down the stairs?
Oh, we live up on stilts. She goes up and down the stairs. She's spry. I don't know why they have to grease them up at the fair. She's quick. If she don't want you to catch her, you're not catching her.
That's awesome.
She's fast. If she wants to be, she's fast.
That's awesome. How old is she?
She's 6.5 years old.
Okay.
Had her for 6 years.
How much bigger will she grow?
She's full grown. She's actually about 25 pounds overweight right now just because of acorn season. So after season, she'll probably lose 25 pounds this summer.
Okay. Oh, so she fluctuates that much?
Yeah, she fluctuates as much as I used to.
Well, it's funny. I was going to say, kind of sounds like me.
Yeah.
I personally, I've gained. It was the COVID-20. Now I think it's the COVID-25.
Right. Mine used to be the Christmas 25, and I would lose it in the summer, lose it like by the end of May, it was gone. Now I can lose about half of it. So I got to read all Christmas. 44 hits you hard, man.
You don't have to tell me. I've come and gone on that 44. I'm 47 now. It packs on easy.
Yes.
Getting off, not so much.
No, I gotta lay off the gummy bears.
Oh man, I love gummy bears.
Yeah.
Anything gummies, Sour Patch Kid, you name it. If it's sugary and chewy, I love it.
Yeah.
Twizzlers, I could eat a pound of Twizzlers.
I bake a lot of cakes and pies and stuff.
So let's talk about that. Now, not only are you a fisherman, you're an Iron Chef.
Well, people say Master Chef, but I didn't win. So I like to say I was 9th place to Master Chef. So I was like 8th runner up.
But you would still be considered an Iron Chef, wouldn't you?
Well, I think Iron Chef, you have to go on the show Iron Chef.
Oh, which show were you on?
I was on Master Chef. But
so it's not interchangeable.
No. Like Top Chef, for instance, you go on the show Top Chef if you're already a chef. Master Chef, you can't. You're just a home cook. You can't be a chef.
Okay.
I'd never gotten paid to cook for anybody before Master Chef. Now, it's an average of once a week or once every 10 days. I'm doing private and home chef events for people.
Are you really?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a second career for sure.
Man, that you don't have to worry about weather. You don't have to worry about trailering a boat. You just show up and cook.
Everything.
Wow.
It is. Fishing, the one thing I hate is that I can't control all the factors because, as you well know, we're all control freaks.
That's an understatement.
So in the kitchen, I can control everything. And that's one of the reasons I love it is, if it's not perfect, it doesn't go out. And you can do whatever you got to do to make everything just right. And they're not going to eat without you. So you can take whatever time you need to make it perfect. And it's the one thing I love about, especially the in-home chef events. You're not really on a time schedule. You basically do 6, 7, 8 courses for people. And when they get done with the course, you throw them a little something in between, give you some time for your crew to get everything, plated back up for another course, and you fire that one out. So
how many people are in your crew?
It fluctuates. I've got an event for 15 people for a bachelor party on the 20th, and it'll just be me for that one.
Okay.
But it's only a 4-course. They want 4 fancy barbecue courses. So we'll do like a brisket course with collard greens, and then and like a blueberry white sauce, and then and so it's not that difficult to plate up 15 plates at a time. But I do. We had a 15-person 8-course like super fancy dinner up in Debbie Do, and I took 4 people with me.
Okay.
Yeah, but those are $180 a plate. Without cocktails and wine and stuff. So, I can afford to pay 3 other people to come, and we make sure, we're all running around in their kitchen in our chef's outfits, and we got, I'll rent plates if we need to, tablecloths, anything and everything to make it look as fancy as people want it. So we fluctuate between just me and 4 people.
So how did they find you for Top Chef or the show? How did they find you?
I was at a place here called Red Drum Gastro Pub one night and had a few cocktails, a few libations, and somebody introduced me. We've always had dinner parties at our house. I just it's hard cooking for 2 people, and so I love having people over, and we'll cook a nice dinner, something we would want to eat, just 2 of us, but we'll feed 3 or 4 other people. So we've had dinner parties for a while since we moved in here 15 years ago, and so I was introduced to somebody as this is Jamie. He likes to cook a lot. And the girl's like, "Oh, you should try signing up for this TV show. My ex-husband sent me this email. I'll forward it to you." So I got home like 1:30 in the morning and filled out this application for MasterChef, and I'd never seen the show before, didn't really know what it was. And about a month later, the phone started ringing, and I didn't answer it because I never get calls from California for fishing charters. It's always Google AdWords, some chick named Ann trying to, help me get rid of my school loans I hadn't had for 20 years. Or, I'm going to help you with your Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance. It's always telemarketers.
Or how about extending your car warranty?
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, everybody.
$250.
I don't even have that car anymore.
You're right. Exactly. That's my wife's lease. We don't need a warranty.
Yeah.
So it's one of those deals where I just didn't answer the phone. And then all of a sudden one day I answered it kind of aggressively. I was like, what do you want? And he goes, "This is so-and-so from MasterChef, and we really need you to come downtown tomorrow at 10 a.m. and try out for the show and bring a dish to cook." And I was like, "I got to fish tomorrow. I can't be at 10 a.m. What do you mean you have to fish?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Nobody has to fish." I'm like, "No, that's my job. I have to take fish in the morning. I can come down there like 1:30. So, I showed up with the Traeger in the back of the truck and made shrimp and grits right there in the parking lot. And, 6 hours later, they tasted the food. So it really wouldn't have mattered. I could have made it the night before, I guess. But at any rate, it was about a 6-month process after that tryout in July. And it would have been 2 days from now, 2 years ago, would have been the day I flew out to LA. So February 11th, 2019.
I have to fish. Who has to fish? It's so funny. We are a little bit spoiled in that because I say that all the time. Somebody's like, "Hey, can you meet up tomorrow to talk about whatever?" I'm like, no, I got to fish. You got to fish.
Number one.
Yeah, it's like number one. There's a reason why I've never been married, because it's always been my number one.
Right.
Oh, fishing? Absolutely. If somebody called me up right now to jump on a plane and go somewhere, I'd pack my bag. I literally.
Wait, aren't you flying out tomorrow or the next day?
Next week.
This week.
Next. I am going sword fishing tomorrow, though.
Nice. I just killed 2 down in Alvarado.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
What? How big?
One was right at 100 and one was 125. We only reason we killed them is Bubba. Bubba Blade was bought and they're rebranding.
So
they come out with a lot. I'm rubbing the pig's butt, so she'll be quiet. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
I'm rubbing her hams.
All right.
Actually, it's not her hams. It'd be her butt. It's not her shoulder. But at any rate, Bubba flew a bunch of us down there. I guess they're ambassadors / social media people. And it was me and a bunch of other cooks and me and a bunch of other fishermen. I was pretty much the only person there that was like both. There were some spear fishermen there that are chefs. But they wanted us to catch some fish the first day. Excuse me. And then Hawks Cay let us take over. They have 3 restaurants at Hawks Cay. And so they let us take over because one of them doesn't do breakfast. Another one doesn't do lunch. Another one doesn't do dinner. They let us take over the kitchens and I think 2 out of the 3 and prepare a meal for the whole crew. all the Bubba people, the marketing guys, everybody with the stuff that we had caught. So like Kelly Cahoon was there and her husband, Nicole Spence was there. I'm trying to think. Cameron Kurt Connell was there. It was a lot of great people there. So it was a lot of fun. But we had the pressure on to kill enough swordfish to do some knife demonstrations with the filleting, which they had to they needed to get footage of that. So there's a lot of good photographers there doing that. Food art photographers and sport fishing photographers. But it was a really cool experience. So. That was a lot of fun, but that's the first one I've killed since 2001.
Holy smokes.
I haven't even been sword fishing since 2001. So, putting it, 8 foot AFCO straight gaps in them was a lot of fun.
It's funny because for us, we're pretty lucky, compared to anywhere else in the country here on South Florida. Going out, sword fishing isn't that far out.
No, it was a 40-minute ride in a 27 contender.
Yeah, it's not far.
No, and it's pretty good. I mean, everybody knows Nick Stanzik. Nick actually used to second mate for me when he was like 7 or 8 years old. Every now and then he'd ride along. But we brought that technique that they use now back from Venezuela. That's where it all started, the daytime dropping and stuff.
That's what a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
They don't realize that came from Venezuela. I remember doing it, sending my washdown boy out with a bunch of onion bags.
Yeah.
And say, okay, go fill them up, and we'd set them off for 15 pounds.
Fill them up with what?
Rocks. Exactly.
Take the cooler with the wheels on it up to the riverbed, fill it up with rocks, wheel it back down, and then you fill up. It's the same kind of bag that you plastic Easter eggs in.
Yeah.
This bag, and you tie off one end, and you fill up with 10 pounds, and tie it shut. And we used to actually troll little Japanese feathers across the bank, Lagora Bank, and catch
blackfins.
Yeah, 1.5, 2 pound blackfins, and then you rig them like a Spanish, but backwards.
Exactly.
So they go down nose first, and they won't spin on the way down. And you take a piece of 15 pound or wax thread and hook it onto the shank of your 7766 and fire it to the bottom. Man, and we buy booby bread because booby bread had that big balloon in it for the kids, and we tie the balloon off, and the balloon would lay down or stand up, and as soon as you bite, the balloon would lay down.
And it's like, that's a bite. Yeah. That's a bite.
What are you talking about? What are we doing with this big ass plastic?
It was the big old cylindrical balloons, yeah. and the lead back then. I mean, the breakaways were 10 pounds, but the lead was only 2 or 3 pounds, but it was enough to keep the balloon upright.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And as soon as you got a bite, they would start swimming up to the surface. Yep. So there's no pressure on that balloon anymore, and it would lie down, and you're like, oh, we're getting a bite. It was like the opposite of bobber fishing as a kid. Yep. The bobber would go down, you got a bite. No, this is the opposite. The bobber just kind of lays on its side, and it's like, we're having a bite. We're having a bite.
Not tangled up, which is what happens when the bobber's laying on its side.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'd say the only difference now from the technique that they're using is with the 10 pound sash weight, which is $100 piece of lead nowadays. But that sash weight's so heavy that when you get the bite, you see the rod tip barely, like sheephead fishing, you see it barely tick, and then you open it up so that the lead falls, and that sets the hook, which is a little different than the way we did it by then, because you break off that 10 or 15 pounds that would be the sash weight. Once it hits 1,700 feet, when you break that off, you start coming back up the ledge, then you only have, like you said, it's a 1 or 2 pound lead underneath your light, and
that's it.
That was it. So, the technique's a little different now, but as a whole,
you also have, now we have electric reels. Back then they had me at 23 years old.
Well, that and the kite reel.
Oh my gosh.
The kite reel to catch them, remember?
Oh my gosh. I also remember the old kite reels where you'd have to turn the handle all the way around. It was 1-to-1.
First, the ones in the ceiling?
Yeah, exactly. The big pancake ones.
Oh my God. And I remember when the pancake ones came out and they were recessed, that was like a big deal. That was a big deal. Way before you had the drop down cabinet and
I don't want to mention any names because I don't want to make I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but there was years ago in Mexico, there was a certain captain that stood other fishermen up for dinner. He said he was coming over and he didn't. And
Hilton Head, would he?
No, this was out of the country. So literally
it wasn't Bubba Carter, was it?
No, it was not. It was not. And just so you know, if you do name the right name, I won't confirm or deny it. But you can keep throwing names out. Anyway, so we thought it was a funny thing to put a fillet covered in A1 steak sauce up in his box, in his teaser box. And he went out fishing. And when he got out to fishing, I was not there, but his mate was very happy to let us know when he pressed that button and that raw fillet came out covered in A1 sauce and covered his shirt and deck of the boat. He was pretty livid.
I'm sure he was a little upset with that one.
And a little scared too. If I had a 8-ounce or 10-ounce fillet drop out of a box above my head, I'd be a little freaked out.
Yeah, that's I mean, he knew exactly who had done it and what it was as soon as it happened.
Oh, absolutely. No, there was no doubt about it. There was no doubt about it. I mean, listen, one thing us fishermen are good for is practical jokes.
Right. And most of the time they go awry.
Well, that's what a practical joke is for.
Yeah.
It's to go awry. It's, those are the good ones.
Yeah. We hung a 100-pound doe up on the scale at Big Rock one time.
100-pound what?
Doe.
Oh, really?
4 in the morning, and they weren't real happy about that next day. It didn't cross our mind that they were going to be. We found it on the side of the road on the way home from Jake's or Jack's, whatever the bar is. We fished the first 3 days, and we were laying the last 2, and we were on the way to Bermuda, so the boat was at Jarrett Bay getting worked on, getting cutlass bearings, new shaft. I think we had cracked shaft seal. And we passed this doe on the side of the road that somebody hit with a car. Didn't cross our minds that it wasn't deer season, and everybody was going to be looking for bullet holes. They had all the DNR down there looking for bullet holes to see who had shot this thing. And I was like, oh, man, that's not at all what we anticipated happening. But we hung this thing up and took a picture. And I still, to this day, every now and then in a tournament, you hear somebody whispering about, hey, they hung a doe up here one time, got in trouble for it. I'm like, yeah, I know those guys.
I love when rumors come back around and people don't realize you were the rumor mill. Yeah, you were the one that started it.
Yeah. There's a guy here in town, perfect example. I won't say any names, but if any of my friends see this on who I'm talking about, he likes to flounder fish a lot. And one of the bartenders downtown had caught a bunch of flounders, and some really big ones, like 27, 28-inch ones, and 8, 9, 10 pounders. And this cat found the picture and happened to go in and talk to the same guy. I was like, oh, dude, look at these flounders I caught, and showed him the picture of the flounders he had caught. That's the kind of stuff that gets people in trouble, when the rumor mill starts flying and they want to be a part of it.
It's funny. Do you know Freddie Potatoes?
I don't. I've heard the name. I don't know him.
So Freddie Potatoes, and I don't want to tell the whole story of how he got the nickname, but I was the one that gave him the nickname. And it had to do with a big old dock party and stuff like that. Anyway, probably that was back in 99. So that's 22 years ago. Right. I would say maybe 10, 12 years after the dock party where he got his name, I'm at Sailfish Marina and some young kid walks up to the group of all of us talking, and somebody says, oh, Freddie Potatoes. And this young kid, being 23, 24 years old, comes out and says, oh, Freddie, yeah, I know how he got his name. We were having this big old dock party. And I'm like, oh, you know how he got his name? Really? You were at this dock party. Now I'm thinking to myself, this dock party at the time was like 12 years earlier. You're 24. So you would have been 12 years old in middle school, and you wouldn't have been allowed on a dock while we're fishing.
By the law or your parents.
Yeah, by anybody. And here you are telling me that you were there, but go ahead, tell me the story. And so he starts describing, oh yeah, we had this big dock party down in St. Thomas. And I'm like, really, how big was it? Oh, it had to be 100 people. I'm like, wow, a full 100 people.
Right. A whole 100.
All right. So good. And he went through it and he was about 50% correct. Right. And so I ended up later on that night, I called Freddie Potatoes. And by that time, I had a few cocktails in me. I'm like, do you know who this little shit is? She's like, never heard of them.
That's
Never heard of them. But it's like you said, it's, people want to be a part of the story, and it didn't hurt nobody. And really, I like telling the story more than anything else now. It didn't hurt nobody. It's you know what? As a fisherman, stories get bigger and bigger every year. So I go for it, dude. Go
exactly.
for it. If you were 12 years old and you heard about it and you want to tell the story, tell the story.
That's how you get from lore to legend, right?
Exactly.
Stories
Now,
it wasn't before.
I want to go back to the roadkill story only because I was involved in a roadkill practical joke as well up in Nova Scotia, Canada.
Okay.
So a lot of people know I go up to Nova Scotia giant tuna fishing with my friend Curtis, but Curtis's primary job is a lobster fisherman. So every couple of years, I like to go up there and go lobster fishing, not for anything other than to hang out with my buddy Curtis.
Right.
And
different trees, as they say in the hunting world.
yeah, you just want to hang out with your boys.
Yeah.
So we go up, or I go up. I flew from the Big Rock right up to go lobster fishing with Curtis, and we're having a good time. And next thing you know, they're pulling up a trap, and it's like, whoa, this one's coming up full. So we're looking over the side, and it's like, man, there's got to be a lot of lobsters in that trap. You can see something in there.
Right.
So we lift this lobster, the first lobster pot up, and lo and behold, it's a porcupine.
What? Not what I thought you were saying right now.
Man, let me tell you something. So it came after we saw what it was. It was a porcupine. Curtis had told us that somebody had seen a dead porcupine on the road and decided, hey, it'd be a good practical joke to put it in Curtis's lobster pot. So they pulled up his lobster pot. And listen, the area you fish is not that big. It's not like you have to run 20 miles offshore. Everybody's literally.
And you know whose pot's whose, yeah.
Oh, exactly. Everybody, your pots all have the same colors. So, okay, we took a bunch of pictures and pulled the porcupine out of the lobster pot. And then I'm thinking, man, that's pretty nice of you to get the porcupine out of the pot.
Yeah.
Well, little did I know, the reason we took the porcupine out of the pot was we went over to the next person's string of pots,
put it in there,
lift up their pots, and I come to find out when you want to play a good practical joke, you just put it in their first lobster pot. You want to play a really good joke, you put it in their second or third one. So they don't even realize until they're halfway up the string.
Right.
So I think that porcupine made the rounds to everybody's lobster pot. But like you said, you try to do a pretty good practical joke, and then next thing you know, it goes awry.
It's like putting a billy goat in somebody's cockpit and then not realizing it's going to eat the teak,
That sounds like something you've done.
No, I'm not going to say who did it.
Okay.
You got me thinking about when you said St. Thomas.
Well, it's so funny because when you leave the country fishing, you have a tendency to do it's like, no matter how, it's so funny because people always ask, man, you seem to, you're always so happy. And I'm like, listen, I've been fortunate enough to make a career out of my passion.
Right.
And then I got older and I was able to build a business out of that same passion where we get to talk about fishing and introduce people to fishing. But deep down inside, I'm just a 16-year-old that shaves and gets to go fishing. So when you leave the country, you're that same 16-year-old. And, at the end of the night, it's not so bad now. We were talking about it earlier, being 44 and 47. But when you're like 22 and you're having a couple cocktails on the dock and it's 2 a.m, it's like, oh, what would be really funny?
Right.
Because it sounds funny when you're drinking.
Oh yeah.
And then when you wake up in the morning and your captain grabs you by the ear and says, hey, did you have anything to do with this? Go clean up your mess.
Right.
It's not so funny.
Yeah. Or when he says, I don't care whether you were involved or not, go help him clean it up.
Yeah.
That's worse because he doesn't even want to know if you had anything to do with it.
Yeah.
But
But
it is what it is. It's just like here, I would never pick up an iguana at a restaurant and scare the waitress.
in St. Thomas, you can get away with that.
If you go to Molly Malone's, it's kind of a prerequisite.
It's part of the deal.
Yeah, exactly. You got to do it. So everything
I
goes when you're out of the country.
I know. Did you ever fish Tropic Star, Penis Bay?
I haven't fished Tropic Star. I've delivered some boats to Flamingo, but that's
Okay.
as close as I got.
So
Mark Davis, you posted that.
yeah.
Mark's been trying to talk me into going forever. And one of these days I'll take the wife down there, but I want to go.
Well, number one, go, because it's a great place to fish out of. And if you stay at the lodge, it's way, way cool. But anchoring up in the bay is just that much better because there's a sense of camping to it. There's no way to get there by car. The only way to get there is either by boat or by plane.
Right.
There's no city interaction. There's no street lights. There's absolutely nothing. And you're in the middle of the jungle.
Yeah.
And if you go back to the old story of Captain Ron, gorilla, huge difference.
Yeah.
So they have the Navy ship down there to protect everybody. You're in the middle of nowhere. You're in the middle of the jungle. So the years that I was down there on the Real Tide, I can't remember if we did 3 seasons or 4. And then I did a season before that on the Salt Shaker. But when you're on the boat and you leave them cockpit lights on at night, you wake up in the morning to get ready and you have some prehistoric animals all over your boat.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got some rhinoceros beetles, you've got grasshoppers that wingspan are, sometimes 10, 12 inches long. These things are massive. And
that's it.
What's that?
Stuff that you only see in books,
Yeah, exactly. And we were notorious. You wake up and you find some giant grasshopper, you grab it, you throw it in your freezer, so it'll die. And we'd pin their wings back. We'd do all kinds of stuff. And then when people fall asleep on the boat,
yeah, that's
you just you either kind of put it on their chest, or what we were notorious for is a little piece of 4-pound and then tie it up to the overhead and swing it into somebody. Hey man, what's that flying around your face? And just as they open up, you just wing that little thing. you see a giant grasshopper flying in and landing on you. People start freaking out.
Oh yeah. You when you were down there, was the Nuco 2 with you?
Absolutely.
All right. So when I was in Venezuela in 2001, Nuco left there and came and was docked right next to us.
Okay.
And showed us a video. I can't remember who else was on the boat or who told him, but there was a mothership at the time, and they were staying out in the bay and tied to the mothership for dinner and stuff. And somebody was with them, told them not to even worry about a dredge, that it's not going to work. Whatever the case may be. And the next video was them free gaffing 40-pound dolphin off the dredge.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that.
It's
Chris Wilson.
Chris Martin.
That's it. Yeah.
It was
Mark Willis boat.
Yeah, it was what's his name? Mitch Pearson was running it. Mitch Pearson. It was Kevin, is Chris Martin, and I'm trying to think I think it was Wonga that was working with them.
Yeah, I don't think it was just the two of them when they got to where we were.
Okay.
But those guys are great, man. They kind of showed us the ropes. I'd never been down there before. It was cool having them right next to us.
Venezuela was just great fishing.
That boat, man, that mint green boat was beautiful. That's the first Mark Willis I'd ever seen. And ever since then, I've always said if I was stupid enough to ever buy a sport fishing boat again, for the second time, that it would be a Mark Willis.
Somebody just told me the other day, they're like, you better never buy a boat. And I'm like, man, I hate to tell you, but I have an 18-foot flats boat that I love, a skiff to go snook fishing and go to the sandbar, stuff like that. I haven't used it for 4 years.
That's your fault.
It's 100% my fault. It's 100% my fault mainly because of the fact that I'm just busy. People are like, hey, let's go fishing. Okay, let's go. And then to get it out of storage and get this and get that. Somebody just called me up.
Action craft.
it's a master Maverick Master Angler.
I knew it had to be one of those two.
It's a 1990
Right.
Master Angler that I took to the boys at Merritt's when I was still on the Real Tight, and I had it painted. So it's ice blue with Matterhorn white on top.
Nice. I like
Yeah,
that.
no, it's called the Fly Swatter. So if you know who I am, you
Yeah.
understand it. And if
Yeah.
you don't, then you just think I like to fly fish.
Right.
And it's funny. I don't know if you know Brian Comer or not. Brian Comer worked for a while. He was one of the Viking captains. He's now a broker with HMY. I had gotten home from St. Thomas, and that's when I used the boat the most. It was when the Real Tight was in St. Thomas. I'd fly home, and then I'd snook fish every day for 2 weeks, for a couple of weeks. And
We got some questions.
what's that?
You got some questions coming in. I see you looking to the side.
Oh yeah, somebody tried to FaceTime me, and so I get a phone call, and Comer's like, "Hey man, how the snook biting?" And I'm like, "They're actually biting pretty good, but how do you know I just got home late last night. How do you know I'm fishing?"
Right.
He goes, "Well, I wanted to go surfing, so I pulled up the Jupiter webcam, and I see your boat drifting through the inlet, and you can't miss it because it says Fly Swatter across the side." So you could see it on the Jupiter webcam.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I haven't used it in a while just because I'm always flying somewhere to go fishing.
Right.
And I probably should have pulled it out now this year with COVID going on, but I've been so busy. I mean, last year I put the book together, which you know about because you're in it.
I don't know if I am. I've got a copy and I can't even find myself in it.
I better look.
Yeah, I don't know.
I better look because you're in there.
Tournaments that year, and I don't know, but I've read most of the book. It's in the bathroom. If that tells you how much I've read.
A lot.
A lot. And it's great, man. I love the way you put it together. It's cool. It talks about a lot of tournaments that I used to fish that I wish I was still fishing, and it made me homesick for bill fishing. I can tell you that, which is it's one of those things you never get out of your system ever.
No, you know what? You're 100% correct. I love it.
Fishing, if I never do it again, it'll be too soon. Bill fishing, if somebody called me tomorrow, I'd be like, yes, let's go.
Let's do it. I'm pretty spoiled with the bluefin tuna fishing because I do the Canada thing.
Right.
And when your average fish is like 750, 800, and you're lucky enough you're getting 2 to 3 every day. Yeah, and for me as a Florida boy, you're different in South Carolina, but Florida, I had never seen leaves change until I went to Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
I had never seen, and again, I'm not from Florida. I'm not paying attention to it. So to me, it literally was like one day you look out and it's like, where did all this color come from?
Right.
Where did all this color come? And I know it doesn't happen that fast, but it's pretty fast.
Seems like it, especially lately. I think we're losing a season. The further we go down the road, the closer we get to losing a season. It seems like it goes straight from winter to summer. There's no spring anymore. And all of a sudden the marsh grass, in a week's time, literally the marsh grass is green again. But the same in the fall, in a week's time, it's brown,
Yeah. I think it has a lot to do with where you live. Like here in Florida, we just finished winter. It was last week. It lasted for like 3 days.
Right.
And if you didn't pay attention to it, it's gone. We had 3 days. We had one day that we had 35 degrees. Then we had 2 days of 40, and then it was 80 degrees again. And that's it. We're in spring. So it's completely over. We have another cold front coming through, but that's only going to get down to like 59 and
cool front.
It's a cool front. Yeah. I mean, it's enough to switch the wind to the north and you'll get some sailfish out of it. But it's not enough to make it cold. And okay, I'm ready. That's why I'm going to Guatemala next week.
There you go. Now, are you just sailfishing?
In Guatemala?
Are you gonna do white moms on the fads or?
No. So Guatemala, we're just I'm having a tournament there. It's kind of like it's more of a big networking thing. Putting some pro athletes together with some business owners, and It was something I wanted to do, especially after the big shutdown. David had, a big opening right in the middle. And I'm like, hey, can I, put something together? He's like, go ahead. And, traveling starting to open up. And for me, I'm ready to jump on a plane and go catch it, some sailfish. And a couple of weeks ago, they had a really good bite. They were averaging in the 90s. So I think one boat had 96 bites, one boat had 99 bites. So, I mean, that's great fishing.
Yeah, and that's really happening in Guatemala.
Yeah, it's so I'm looking forward to that, going down there and fishing with David and having some friends come in. I got a couple NFL players coming in. And
who you got coming in?
Jared Fison, trying to get Corey legit. I'm mispronouncing his last name. Hold on, it's on my list. He was drafted by the San Diego Chargers.
Gotcha. Yeah.
He is. He just had some knee surgery, so we got to make sure he's. Why isn't he? Oh, there he is. Leggett, Corey Leggett, and then Scott Matheson from the Philadelphia Phillies.
Cool.
He's coming down. We just did a bison hunt together. I don't know if you saw those pictures I posted up.
No, I didn't see him.
Yeah, we went to South Dakota and we shot 5 bison.
Nice.
No, it was great. It was great. Everybody asked me, and they're like, "Oh, how big was the one you caught? You shot?" And I'm like, you know what? I didn't shoot one because there were 6 of us,
right?
And I put the trip together. And
you didn't go out there to shoot one. You went out there to take other people to shoot one.
Yeah, and not just that. I took a bunch of pictures, but I still came home with 125 pounds of meat. I've been eating bison like crazy. We had bison burgers for Super Bowl, and oh my God, it's so good.
Bison fillet is the best fillet you'll ever put in your mouth. Besides elk, elk's probably the only.
I love elk. An elk fillet is phenomenal.
We get a place here that'll sell you the whole rack of ribs, with fillet attached, kind of like you're eating tomahawk pork chops.
Yeah,
you get an elk rack, and it's ludicrous how good they are.
Best meat. What are they getting per pound for that, for the elk?
I haven't bought them in a while. It's expensive. It's not cheap.
Yeah. Okay. I was curious. Yeah. Every time I've seen them, they're ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're ridiculous. Something in the, $30-$35 a pound range.
Oh yeah. It's not cheap at all. It's, it's right up there. Not as expensive as Wagyu, but it's close.
It's up there. It's up there, but it's so delicious. I know for Christmas, we went to Colorado, and we have some friends that live out there, and we went out to dinner. You actually had to cross-country ski into the restaurant and cross-country ski out.
We did that at a place in Jackson Hole.
Okay.
It's snowshoes instead of cross-countries.
Okay. Well, if you wanted to snowshoe in, you could, but we did the cross-country ski. I think I fell 15 times going there and 12 coming back. But everything on the menu was game related. Yeah. So it was duck breast, it was lamb, elk, buffalo, trout, locally caught trout. So there was phenomenal restaurant. I
went like that in North Carolina that we go to every now and then. We're actually thinking about going in the next couple of weeks. They just had a bunch of snow, and it's a big game restaurant.
It's not, unless you're a hunter, and fortunately I am, you can do these trips, but some people, they like to eat it, but they're just not a hunter, or they don't want to take down 1,000-pound animal because they're not one to eat it that often.
Right. Exactly. They don't have access to it,
Exactly. It's not everybody that can just go right outside. Well, you're in South Carolina, so you get plenty of deer. Right. But to jump on a plane and fly out to Colorado, shoot an elk, and then what are you going to do? You shoot 1,000-pound animal, and that's a lot of meat.
$1,000 to get it home.
Exactly. And what are you going to do with it? Exactly. Are you going to have elk? Are you going to have somebody that's going to properly pack it for you so that you can keep it in your freezer for 3 years?
Yeah, luckily they have the processors now, most places that you go, especially if you're with a guide, where they pack it all up, and 3 months later, you get
It's
a
still good.
house. Yeah.
Yeah.
They freeze it, pack it, label it, the whole 9 yards, And you got to
We,
put lunch when you get home to empty your freezer out.
well, it's funny what we did when we got all this buffalo, because that's all cattle country. We took it to one of the cattle butchers,
Right.
and they skinned it and everything. And he's like, no, we turn it around just like cattle. You'll get it in about a day and a half.
Nice.
And literally, what's that?
You don't let it hang?
No,
Hmm.
they didn't let it hang, and they start processing right then and there. And we picked it up, and this, for me, this was the cool part. Again, being a Florida boy, we picked up all the meat and took it to my buddy's house in Iowa, and then one of the other guys drove it to his place in Ohio. And I just grabbed two boxes of ground beef that were 60 pounds a piece, and I was actually going to go fish an ice fishing tournament. I had never gone ice fishing, so I went to an ice fishing tournament that made the book. They invited me, so I just kept the bison in the trunk. And in Florida, you don't leave raw meat in the trunk.
Not even in the cooler.
Not even in a cooler. No. You literally, it's in the cooler just to transport it from point A to point B with a lot of ice.
Yeah. And
then you put it right back in the freezer. And this thing sat in the trunk for 4 days. 4 days. And, I'm getting ready to fly home. I'm like, I should check this just to make sure. And I cut it open, and rock solid, man.
More frozen than it was when you put it in there.
Oh my gosh. Well, here was the funny part. I had a bottle of water that I had in the car, full 9 yards. And I go out on the lake. I was on the lake for like 4 hours. I come back in, frozen.
Frozen solid, yeah.
Well, it wasn't solid, but it was frozen.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I would have left it there overnight, it would have been solid. But it was inside the car. And
I'm not going ice fishing.
Let me tell you, it was so awesome.
I'll bet. I mean, I've heard good stories about, being in a little hut and drilling a hole in the ice and all that, but
whoa. This is tournament fishing.
Oh.
So there's no hut. A couple of guys did the huts. But if you're serious, and you being a competitive red fisherman,
right,
you can understand this. So the first guy, and I wish I knew who he was, because I'd love to get him on the podcast. I walked out. Everybody had their snowmobiles and ATVs. There was one team that walked, and good on them. Yeah. But I walked to the first area, which I found out was a rock pile while everybody was there. And I see this guy, he drills a hole, and then he has a PVC T. So it's a PVC stick with a T across it, and at the very bottom there's a transducer, and he lowers this thing down, and I'm thinking, okay, it's a depth finder like we all use. I walk up to him, it's a side scanning sonar.
Right.
He's looking at his screen. He sees everything that's under the water, how the rock pile looks, where the grass is. He paces everything out, and he starts drilling all these holes. And once fishing starts, these are 2-man teams. You can't be within 15 feet of somebody that's not on your team, because they don't want you sharing fish.
Right.
You can't talk to anybody unless they're on your team. And you have a 5-gallon bucket, and you have a depth finder on it. It has a wire with your transducer on it and 3 or 4 rods. You grab your bucket, you go to a hole, you lower down, and you look at your depth finder to see if there. And this was a bluegill tournament, so okay, there's a bluegill down there, 10 feet. They lower their little jig with a worm or maggot or whatever they're using, because there's 3 different live baits that they're using, 1 pound test, and then they lower it down, and they're watching it on the screen right by the fish, and they're just kind of jigging it, and not jigging it too much, just a little bit, and if they get a bite, then they fight it and bring it up. If they don't get a bite, they go to the next hole and see if there's any fish. And the reason they don't put the tents up is because they're constantly moving. You might only be in that one little hole for, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. If you don't get a bite, you go to the next one.
Right.
And listen, everybody, they treated me super, super nice. I didn't talk to many of the guys that were fishing because of the fact that
You don't want to get them in trouble.
exactly, I don't want to get them in trouble. And I got dropped off. I wanted to, there was a shoal that stuck out at a different part of the lake. So they had to take me by 4-wheeler to get there. The lake was 5 miles long.
Right.
And they dropped me off at, I would say, at the back of the group of fishermen, the fleet. Let's call it a fleet because that's what we know it as. Well, I walked through the entire fleet of everybody, and and the fleet, they dropped me off at the north side. So I had to walk all the way to the south, and I start taking pictures of everybody, but it's cold. And
Right.
there's not a lot of wind, but there's just enough. It's blowing 10 to 15 knots. But when it's 17 degrees,
Right.
that's cold.
It's
So
already,
yeah. So, and it was enough that it was starting to affect my camera. I took a lot of pictures. I probably took, I don't know, 1,500 photos. But it was affecting my camera. It was also affecting my fingers.
Right.
So one of the committee guys, he rides his 4-wheeler up to me. He's like, hey man, just to make it a little easier, if you go to the other side, you can turn your back to the wind and take pictures of everybody. And I'm like, that's great, but I don't want to get a picture of everybody's back. I want to stand on this side and take a picture of everybody's face as they're fighting fish. And he's like, oh, I didn't, I was just trying to make sure you were warm. I'm like, yeah, I stay there for, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes. I got a bunch of pictures. And I saw during the day, I think 3 largemouth bass and 2 pike caught, but this was a bluegill only tournament.
Right.
So only bluegills counted. State law was 25 bluegills per person, but the tournament only allowed you to submit 16 bluegills.
Right.
So it was pretty neat. What's that?
Aggregate weight.
Yeah. Well, it was aggregate weight, and then they offered up a largest bluegill award.
Gotcha.
So, but you're only allowed to submit 1 bluegill for the largest bluegill award. So what they would do is you pick whichever one you want, and then you got to put a zip tie, a certain color zip tie that they gave you on the one that you wanted weighed. And the largest one was 0.82 pounds.
Right.
And the winner was like 10 pounds, 10.62 pounds overall for 16 fish.
Right.
But this was my takeaway from the whole thing. I've fished a lot of tournaments in my life, and I've put on a lot of tournaments in my life, and it doesn't matter the species, it doesn't matter the techniques.
Right.
Competition is competition.
That's it.
And it's the same.
Yep.
It really is the same. It's like, wow.
Deep down inside, I mean, you have that competitive nature. If you have it, you have it. If you don't, you don't.
Exactly. And these guys were, they're competitive. I mean, you can just see it in their eyes. You can see it, even though there was, by rule, you can't talk to anybody else. These guys are focused.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, you got to be focused because it's cold.
Yeah, super. You got to really want to be out there.
You want to be out there. And, I can't, here's the thing. And I have never fished a redfish tournament, but I've done enough billfish and offshore tournaments to know that, oh, you know what? I was just writing yesterday about the 2001 North Abaco Championship in Walkers, when half the fleet went home because the forecast was 25 to 30 and gusty for the week. And for people that don't know where Walkers is the northernmost island in the Bahamas. But the next stop after Walkers is Ireland.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing between Walkers and the open ocean. That's what it is. So anytime that there's a storm in the Atlantic, Walker's is gonna take it on its chin.
Right.
And so with it blowing 20 knots, 25 to 30, and wherever it was coming from, it had a big swell to it on top.
Yeah.
To boot. So yeah, it was ungodly. So when, I say ungodly, we're fishing, it's all of 15 foot, 12 to 15 foot for a week.
Right.
And we're out there blue marlin fishing. So people are looking at us thinking, what in living hell did you lose out there that you have to go out?
Right.
And
what separates the men from the boys?
Same thing. I mean, but it's the same thing when you look at ice fishing, or in your case, if it's rainy and blowing and you're out there, and trust me, I'm not going to sit there and tell anybody that, oh yeah, I love it, it's 30 knots. No, I sit there. There's been times and I wonder, should I have taken up chess?
Yeah.
An indoor sport. But this is, you don't pick your passion picks you.
Yeah, the first tournament I won out of Biloxi, as a matter of fact, I ran back to Louisiana and fished in Delacroix and in Biloxi Marsh, which is actually on the Mississippi side of what they call the Mr. Go, the Mississippi River Gulf outlet comes out in Delacroix. And it was blowing real bad. I think 5 or 6 boats went home out of 40, didn't even fish the tournament. And there was only, I think, 8 of us that decided to cross. And so when you cross from Gulfport or Biloxi, I think it's from Biloxi side, when I was all the way at the end, I was on the east side of Cat Island and all that. We're looking at 40 miles. But wow. You got about a 15-mile stretch, though, where it's open to the Gulf of Mexico, and the wind's coming straight across the Gulf. It was like 5 to 7 foot seas. I got real lucky at that point in time. It was the last weekend that I had a 25-foot Scout bay boat that Scout had given me for the year. If I'd been in my Sterling, there's no way I could have fished it. But my cameraman looked at me. I mean, he was scared half to death. It was so rough that the engine mount bolts got hot and stretched, and the 350 was going up and down a half inch on each side.
Wow.
On the way there, each morning, I had to stop twice on the way there and tighten up the bolts with 3/4 inches. It was that rough. And I wound up winning that tournament by 9.79 pounds, the largest margin of victory ever to this day on the Elite Series. And it's because 5 or 6 of those guys went home. And, I don't want to sell myself short, but it was guys like Clark Jordan and Dwayne Eshte, guys that are constantly winning these tournaments, consistently winning these tournaments, the best red fishermen, sight fishermen in the world. And I still say to this day, I wouldn't have won that tournament if those guys had stayed. But again, it's what separates the men from the boys. Did you bring the right equipment? Are you willing to go put yourself and your equipment to the test that day? And that's what it all boils down to. I mean, it's no different than these guys in their 23-foot boats fishing these king mackerel tournaments against guys in their 40-foot yellowfins.
Whoa.
But they want to be in that 23-foot category, and they're willing to get their ass kicked all day long, every day for that tournament. And that's one thing that 40 years old taught me, was to stop beating myself up. And, I don't fish. If it's below 38 degrees outside, we're canceling today. If it's 3 to 5 in the harbor, we're going to push it off and go another day. I've just gotten old enough where I'm not beating myself up anymore.
I just had that conversation today as we're getting ready to go sword fishing tomorrow. I says, I think the weather looks good. And they're like, yeah, I'm not as mad as I used to be. If it's not good, I ain't going. Right. And I'm like, great.
Yes, thank you. I like that.
Great, because I didn't
fight for you as good as they did before that moon last 2 weeks ago. We did 6 drifts and we had a bite on every drift. We had 6 bites.
That's awesome fishing.
3 hours. We were out there 3 hours and caught 2 and had 6 bites. We had one on that. Nowadays when they're drifting, they do a bottom and a balloon rod, and we had him up. 30. We could see him 30 feet, 35 feet, not close enough for a harpoon shot. About 250. And it was my guess. And then he sounded and went back around the balloon, and the braid cut the mono leader. Yeah, I know. In retrospect, I had never dragged a balloon and 2 bottom rods. We always ran a rigger to the bow cleat and just ran 2 bottom rods.
Okay.
And bite, you pull the other one up, And now I guess what you do is you prospect with that balloon rod in hopes of getting a second bite. Which, it was that part was new to me. But after that, I was like, next time we just need to put that joke in free spool, let it 2 miles out the back while we're drifting with this fish on.
Exactly.
That's that way he's not even going to come close to getting back to it, you know? And so, and then we had another one on that was even bigger than that, but pulled the hooks, which, you know, as a sword fisherman, you and I both know that pulling the hooks on swordfish is, that happens
Normal.
catching them. I was actually flabbergasted that he was putting 20 pounds of drag on. You know, we not used, I'm, you know, blue marlin fishing, we use 8 pounds, 9 pounds, 7 pounds.
I use 12 on the bite, and I pretty much leave it there depending on what the fish is doing.
For lures, yeah, but bait fishing, I always we
Oh, yeah.
You know, but you know, for putting 20 pounds on one, that was a big deal. But also, we never did the whole drop after the bite and let the lead hook them. So that was a little bit different, you know, strategy, because you know, once they're hooked after that lead bite, and you wind tight on them, if they run and you wind tight on them again, 90% of the time, he said you've got them. You know, we went with guys, Real Deal Charters. They did a great job. Bubba set it all up, you know. And of course, Nick was booked anyway.
Nick's always booked. He's always booked. He
wasn't going to go. He said, Jamie, I don't really go on Sundays and Mondays and Tuesdays anymore. I was like, dude, you're too young to be taking off 3 days a week. But you know, he's got all kind of stuff going on.
Yeah, but he's got a family. He's got 2 kids. That's hard.
Yeah, and he'll be running the marina soon if he's not already.
That's true.
I'm proud of him, just seeing him come up from him and Beanie running around. You know, Alex Adler's son-in-law, watching, or stepson, watching those 2 run around when they're, you know, 6, 7, 8 years old. They've come a long way, man. I'm proud of them.
No, it's I remember Nick the first time I saw him in St. Thomas. He was on the Jacks. This was 04, 05.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, holy smokes, that was 16 years ago.
Yeah.
I just dated myself. I'm like, man.
I think that's when I was there.
You were on that Mickelson, weren't you?
No, when I was there, I was on a tribute. The 72 tribute.
Was HT Hook?
Hook, yeah.
Okay.
And Peter Wright, you know, most of those boats that are there for the Marlin University tournament, it's the week after Molly Malone's. Most of those boats are the smaller boats, like the Bertrams and stuff.
Yeah.
And, Peter fished with us the first day, and what they normally do is, like, whatever the charter group is, they get that boat for the week for the, you know, Marlin University, and then the instructors move around. And Peter got on the boat with us the first day and was like, you know what, we're changing this. I'm staying on this boat all week, and we're going to move the classes around.
That's the way they still do it.
Do they really?
Yeah.
That probably was the first time he did it like that, but I know that he wasn't supposed to be with us all week, and then he was. I also know that he didn't know that I bill fished, and Stedman Birch was running the boat, and Stedman wasn't feeling well, had a little bit of a liquid headache from the night before.
Brown bottle flu.
Yeah, and so he went down in the stateroom, and it was me and Mike Provo and Roddy Haynes. And so Mike and Roddy were in the cockpit, and Stedman was like, "Here, hold the wheel. You know, if we get a bite, just pull one back, turn to that side, whatever." I was like, "Yeah, I know the drill." Sure enough, the only bite we had all week was right then. And Peter Wright's like freaking out because I grabbed the steering wheel and started driving. He's like, "What are you doing?" He thought I was part of Marlin University. Had no clue that Stedman had called me to come down and fish. And he was freaking out. But you know,
oh my God,
30-second period, we had him figured out that, you know, I'm supposed to be doing this. It's fine.
So that was the year that I stitched up Stedman. He cut his leg open, needed stitches.
That doesn't surprise me.
And it was 2:00 in the morning.
Also, doesn't surprise me.
I don't want to go into full details, but all I know is I was coming back home and I saw a couple guys walking off my boat, and I'm like, whoa. So, which reminds me of another story. But as I'm walking to the boat to figure out who it is, it's Stedman and Porkchop.
Yeah.
And Stedman's like, look at my leg. And I'm like, dude, you need to go to the hospital. He's like, no, I don't want to go to the hospital. I'm like, you need to go to the hospital. And Eric's like, oh, no, I got the suture kit. And I'm like, you're going to do what? And he goes, oh, we're going to stitch him up. Yeah. And Stedman's like, yeah, Porkchop, you know, he volunteered to stitch me up. I go, did he volunteer to tell you he passes out at the sight of blood? Right. And he goes, I think I can stay awake this time.
And instantly you are nominated.
So he looks at me and he's like, Fly, please, can you stitch me up? And I'm like, man, I really don't want to do this. Okay. Yeah. So we went back to the HT Hook. and I got a engine room diaper and some gloves, and I started stitching him up. Well, truth be told, the actual story was, Fly, can I get you a drink? And I was drinking back then, so I'm like, listen, I have no business. I've already had a couple of drinks.
Right.
I have no business having another drink, and then trying to stitch you up.
Right.
And he goes, I don't trust anybody that doesn't drink. And I'm like, all right, fine. So I said, where's your solo cups? I grab a solo cup, and where's your ice machine? Where's your vodka? And I start pouring it. And he's like, hey, the grapefruit juice or cranberry juice is over there. And I'm like, no, this is how I drink it. I just drink it on the rocks. It's vodka and water.
Right.
And he's like, you drink it straight? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I don't. I go, wait, what do you? I don't what? I go, you already started this thing. I'm gonna stitch you up. So, and we have been taught how to, we had a team doctor. Jim had his personal doctor, and he taught us how to stitch people up. And that's where we learned that pork chop passes out at the side of blood.
That's funny.
Joe volunteered to get stitched up, and about 3 stitches into it, we hear boom, and there's young pork chop on the deck.
Done. And yeah,
we're freaking out. We're like, oh my God, what happened? And the doctor's laughing, grabs him by his feet, lifts up his feet. He wakes up and he looks up at us. He's like, what are you guys looking at? So I get the first stitch into Stedman. I get the second stitch into Stedman. And, just like any of us, you have a couple of drinks, you get a little lazy. Stitches is not a place to get lazy. So I put the first 2 were good stitches. The third one, I'm like, hell with it. I'll stitch them up like a mackerel. So that's what I did.
That's what I would have done anyway.
No, there's a specific way. There's a specific way to stitch people up, and the 2 were okay. So, and this thing was, it was a big cut. This thing was like 9-10 inches long.
Right.
So the next day, Stedman comes to the boat and he goes, hey, look at this, and it's a normal cut. There was no blood. There was no anything. The only thing that you can see was the plasma, which is the clear fluid of blood. It was a little bit was coming out. And he goes, I think I should go to the hospital. And I looked at him straight in the eyes and I said, no effing way.
Right.
He goes, well, I'm worried I might get an infection. I says, I don't care.
Right. They're going to look at my stitch job.
You are not going to the hospital because I wanted you to go there and you said no. So now you have to deal with the ramifications of this whole thing. So anyway, the owner of that boat is a doctor. Yeah. So our only thing was, hey, listen, just replace our Novocaine and replace our suture kit. And we only had one suture kit.
He's not just a doctor. He designed the apparatus that goes on your spine.
I was trying to protect his personal.
This guy's
the guy's a genius. He is a genius. And I don't want to throw him under the bus because I don't want somebody to hear this. And
yeah, sorry, I should.
No, it's okay. But he
impressed by that.
The guy is a complete genius. And anyway, and he knows about what happened because he had to fly us in all the stuff. So he comes down. We had already started fishing. We were like 3 or 4 days into the moon, and he shows up to the boat with the Novocaine and the suture kit. And he walks in and he's talking to Jim and, hey, Doc, how are you? And he personally comes up to me. Thank you so much for what you did for my captain. And me being the arrogant little shit that I am. Hey, Doc, I got to ask, how were the stitches?
How are my stitches?
So he looks at me, and I'm assuming you've met and fished with him.
I have not.
Okay. So he has a very dry personality, dry sense of humor, but super, super nice guy. I mean, just a sweet, one of those guys you can call up, hey, I need a ride, and he'd drive 2 hours to pick you up.
Right.
And he, so when I asked him, how did I do? And he looked at me kind of sideways, and we're all in the salon together, the real tight. He goes, Well, considering he probably needed somewhere between 150 and 200 stitches, and you gave him 14, it's okay. You held the meat together.
And it's not Dacron, which was the only other option.
Well, yeah, that, you know what? That's a good point, because back then there was no braid.
No.
We didn't have braid back then.
You would have been sewing up with wind-ons.
Oh, I mean, he's lucky I just didn't put blue tape on him.
Right, super glue.
So, man, and it's funny because the way it was cut, it looks like a turkey track.
Right.
Because it wasn't like a straight cut. It was like a cut and then it branched out.
And he's got all turkey tracks on his back anyway.
Yeah, so it worked out. He's got a turkey track scar on his foot. Everybody, hey, is it true that you stood up Stedman? And I'm like, well, all I know is he can swim about a knot faster since I've been done with him.
Yeah, we could sit here telling Stedman stories for 2 days, man. That guy and I, we go way back. We probably go 25 years back.
Yeah, no, I've known him not that long. I would say I've known him for 20 years.
Yeah. He used to had Dirty J working for him, and was running the it was a 39 Merit, I think, that used to be here in Charleston, and then and it spent half the year in Palm Beach at Sailfish. I can't remember the name of it right now.
Was it the Deuce Day?
No, I'll think of it in a second.
What speaking about, you bring up Dirty J. That guy, I haven't seen him in probably 15, 20 years, but he had the best business card.
What did it say?
It said professional captain, mate, keg tapper, and virgin deflower, or something to that effect.
It doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, it was one of those things that was
Mary Agnes.
Oh, that was a 58. Oh, no, they built the 58.
39 or 42, I can't remember.
It was a
old rival, and then they built the Merit.
Then they built the Merit, yeah. And oh my gosh, what was the bald guy's name that ran it? It was he was from South Carolina.
Yeah, it was Davis.
Yeah. Davis. Yeah, I fished with him a couple of times when they had the Rybovich.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. I'm really surprised Stedman lasted as long as he did with him. Davis was like, it's like by the books, straight arrows you can get. I mean, he'd have a drink with you in the afternoon, but you rarely saw him crack a smile.
No, he was very, very straight and narrow.
Oh yeah, I mean, he didn't raise his voice, he didn't crack a smile. It wasn't like any of the Alamorada guys that I grew up fishing with. Yeah,
no, but listen, I fished with him a bunch when they had that Rybovich at Sailfish. I mean, I was a kid. I'm trying to. I would have to say it was in the late 90s.
Yeah. Well, that was I think it was 96 or 97. Let's see. It was probably 97, 98 when I delivered it. Stedman called me up. We got to town. He said, "Hey, help me take this boat back to Sailfish." I said, "Yeah, no problem." Most comfortable bunk beds I've ever slept in my life. They were about, as far as like the single bunks, they were about a foot wider than normal, and they were, the heads overlapped, and that was it. And the whole bed was goose down, and it was so cold down there. And we left here, and it was Monday. We got to Two Lions Bridge in St. Augustine that night, and it happened to be Tuesday it was Fat Tuesday of Mardi Gras.
And wow.
We have the whole street there in downtown St. Augustine's already closed off with all the shops and stores and bars and stuff. So we went down there hanging out and having a good time, and we threw back a few too many. And so the next morning, he was like, "All right, I'll make the first leg." It was slick calm. I'll never forget it. And all we had to do was get to Sailfish, just a 8-hour stint in that boat. It wasn't a fast boat, but it'll get you where you need to go. And I think it had 3406 Cummins in it. They were white motors, I remember. At any rate, the transmissions were real old. Everything in that boat was pretty much original. And he said, "You go down and go to sleep." I was sound asleep. And I just remember hearing something. I remember hearing him pull it back. And, usually you wait, you hear that, you wake right up.
You wake right up, yeah.
Anywhere. What's wrong? What's wrong? And so, especially if you go to sleep thinking, I've got until I feel him do this, or on the deck.
Yeah.
Hear him stomp, it's time to get up. And so I wake up he pulled it back, and instantly it seems like he was in the room, had a fire extinguisher in his hand, and it had a panel of wood attached to the back of it. And he was like, wake up, it's a fire, it's a fire. And I come out and there's already 2 spent fire extinguishers laying in the cockpit, again, with the panels of wood behind. He couldn't get them unbuckled. And so he just ripped the cedar out of the wall. Turns out it was a busted water pump. So it wasn't a fire anyway. It was steam coming out of the engine room.
Oh.
So the brass impeller had sheared off. And I remember we had to put a monkey wrench on the shaft. This is the first time in my life I was like, why you put a monkey wrench on the shaft? He goes, because it'll ruin the transmission.
Exactly.
I mean, I learned something on this trip, by gosh. And so we put the monkey wrench on, and it put like a 2-inch dip. There was so much torque on that monkey wrench. It put a 2-inch dip in the fiberglass in the engine room of that boat.
Really?
We had to take it back. And I remember we rented a Mitsubishi Diamante to get all the way back to Palm Beach. And he was like, well, you're not supposed to be home for like 3 days. Why don't you just stay and hang out? I was like, am I getting paid? He goes, hell yeah.
Okay.
Sure, I'll hang out in Palm Beach for 3 more days. But I'll never forget that, man. I can see it in my mind right now, standing in the doorway with a fire extinguisher and a piece of cedar on the back of it from the closet.
Oh my gosh.
That's
kind of crazy. Yeah, there's a bunch of good stories.
Yep.
There's a bunch of crazy stories, but a bunch of good stories.
Yep. So, but no, before we get off, I want to tell you what I have going on that you and I haven't touched base on is I have an investor that was nice enough. I have a nonprofit.
Okay.
We do rescue and relief work, and I know we're running short on time probably, but
no. I have zero time frame. This is open ended. We just talk until we don't want to talk anymore.
That's perfect then. So I have this nonprofit, and one of my fishing clients turned contributor to the nonprofit / investor has just donated $50,000 to the nonprofit. And so what I was doing all morning before we got on here is I'm in the process of trying to buy a big food trailer so that we can use it to go feed people after these storms and stuff. So that's like on my agenda this week is hopefully I'll have a 25 to 30 foot food trailer before this week's over.
What is the name of your nonprofit for people to look it up?
SoutheastRelief.org.
What is it?
SoutheastRelief.org.
Okay.
And we have an airboat team and a John boat team, and we go in during storms and rescue people from flooded houses. I've got a dispatch crew. It all kind of started with us kind of haphazardly going to Houston during Hurricane Harvey and not really knowing what we were doing. And we took a John boat down and we rescued people and some animals, and we raised about $35,000 in the course of 4 days without even trying to, just people donating money to my business Venmo account. So we got into teaching churches how to feed people for less money on the dollar, and we paid a guy to put a roof on an orphanage and that kind of stuff. So after that event, we realized that we wanted to know where all the money was coming from and where all the money was going. And we didn't like working with the entity that we were working with at that point in time, but I didn't know anything about it. I just started out, I was trying to raise enough money to buy some goods to put in a U-Haul to take down to some of my friends' families that live down there. That's literally how it started. And in about an hour after a Facebook post and somebody asking what the Venmo account was, we looked and it was like $5,000 in the account. And so my wife looks at me and says, I think you got to go to Texas. And so I piled in this girl that we know named Sally. She got in the truck with me, and we put the John boat behind us and filled the truck up with everything we could, from toothbrushes and toothpaste to, in retrospect, we took stuff we didn't need to take, like paper towels, take up a lot of room, but don't weigh much. But now we're a lot more efficient at what we take and where we take it. But during Hurricane Dorian, we sent down over $2.5 million worth of goods to the Bahamas, hundreds of generators, thousands and thousands of pounds of food. I ran the food service in Hopetown for 13 weeks to the tune of 165,000 meals between 2 soup kitchens that we had set up.
Wow.
Yeah, we flew a chef down. I was there for 5.5 weeks myself, but when I wasn't there, like I would fly out on a plane that I would fly another chef in on. So it never overlapped. If anything, like only a lunch was missed that day. And usually we would cook enough at breakfast that there was enough for the people at lunch too. So we flew chefs in and out. We flew all the goods over on planes. We got in with World Central Kitchens real tight. Jose Andreas, they do hundreds of millions of meals a year, and so they pay for all of our ingredients now. So we got in with them during the Bahamas stuff, and we were able to put in orders twice a week. Even when I was home, I was putting in orders twice a week. Me and another fellow named Lorenzo that runs Firefly Resort. And they were sending all the food supplies over to be cooked. So at any rate, we got in really heavy and neck deep during Hurricane Dorian. We raised about $200,000 in a year. And
Wow.
yeah, and so last year we raised right around 75,000. We did a lot of work in Lake Charles, a lot of work in Orange Beach. So I've got a 30-foot smoker that I take, and we make basically cook barbecue for everybody and give it away to people who just lost their homes. And so my goal ever since MasterChef was to get a food truck where I can more easily prepare meals for people. I don't have to be standing out in the rain if it's still raining, and it's a lot safer environment for everybody involved. So that this week we're probably going to wind up with a big food trailer thanks to this investor. So when it's not hurricane season, the food trailer will be here. Still working on a name and an LLC for it, but I think I'm going to go with All Good Everything.
All Good Everything?
Yeah, because if it's not good, we're not going to cook it. So everything we're going to have is going to be good.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, why not? If Jay-Z can have all black everything, we can have all good everything. That's the way I feel about it. So I wanted to name it Clean Plate Club, but it's already taken.
Is it?
Yeah, Clean Plate Club was my first go-to.
What where's it? I mean, where's it located? Is there an LLC already by that name, or?
There's tons of Clean Plate Club LLCs.
Okay.
And there's a Clean Plate Club catering here in Charleston. I've never heard of it until I looked it up. But at any rate, so in the off season, when it's not hurricane season, it'll be here as a working truck, and the nonprofit basically will lease the working trailer from the nonprofit, pay the nonprofit for the trailer for the day, and then the nonprofit also gets 20% of the gross or of the net. So hopefully it'll be a gravy train for the nonprofit, a cash cow, so that we're just not constantly having to ask for donations.
No, that's that's the biggest issue people have with nonprofits. You need to bring in revenue.
Yeah, you got to figure out a way for the nonprofit to make money, and for the nonprofit to invest in something like this, a piece of equipment that it can lease out to other individuals also. So it's going to have everything that any food truck would need, unless it's it's not going to be a funnel cake truck, but you can go cook any meal you want to cook.
What's wrong with funnel cakes, man?
Zero.
Everybody loves funnel cakes.
Yes, but they don't need burners and all the stuff that if you wanted to open a restaurant, you would have to get X amount of pieces of equipment, and this trailer will have what anybody under a normal circumstance would need.
Yeah.
So rent it out. My goal is, food trucks in general are like a stepping stone for getting a brick and mortar. So
absolutely.
Let's do the food truck first, see if we make good enough stuff that people want to buy it, then we'll get a brick and mortar. But there is no stepping stone for the food truck. So my goal is, instead of having, chefs do pop-ups at restaurants, we're going to have chefs do pop-ups in this food truck.
Okay.
And that's why I'm teetering towards All Good Everything as a name, is just because we want to make sure that everything that's going in there is going to be good foods. We test, we taste every piece of food that anybody's going to cook in that food truck. We'll have like a sit down, and they give us samples first before we release it to them. The other thing is, we don't want it to be a niche specific name, like Low Country or this or that, or what. It has to be something that encompasses everything coming out of there. And if we do Faux Fridays, or we do Chicken Wing Wednesdays, or if we do that kind of setup, then people will know, all right, well, on these days they have this kind of food. So on Wednesdays we bring in dudes that are really good at chicken wings, but they don't have food trucks.
I like the idea of it, because you know what? In any business, somebody needs a start.
Exactly.
Somebody needs a start. So what you're doing is
we all started because the first maid didn't show up one morning.
Exactly. Somebody didn't show up, or they showed up and they yelled at somebody, or you just need one opportunity, and you're giving people opportunities, which I love. I think it's great, because there's so many things in my life. If somebody didn't give me an opportunity, I probably would have just gotten to the edge and not figured out how to do it.
Yeah. And my wife's uncle said something to me a long time ago. He's, bless his heart, he's got Parkinson's disease now. We can barely understand what he says, but the guy's a business genius to start with. But he said something a long time ago. He said, Jamie, you're going to be presented with a ton of opportunities in your lifetime. The difference between you and other people is whether or not you take advantage of them. You have to take it and run, and you can't be afraid to you can't be afraid to fail. You can't be afraid to not swim. You got to jump in.
Absolute luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
That's it.
Be ready for it when that door knocks. Somebody knocks on that door.
Exactly.
I'm ready for you.
Yeah.
I know something came up, and I had to shelf something because timing wasn't working. And somebody said, "Hey, can you do something for me?" We did it. We went all the way. And then he's like, "Hold on a second. We're not going to be ready." And how far along are you? And we really were almost done.
Right.
Other than waiting for the date, we were almost done. And it's like, wow, I didn't realize you were that far along. We just told you 2 weeks ago. And it's like, well, we're ready for it. And
Right.
then you got to move. And then after that, you just, things build itself. You know, it's like farming. You plant the seed, get everything ready. And then after a while, then you just,
you got to be there.
yeah, then you just have to let the plant grow.
Exactly.
You know, you got to do all the hard work. And you were ready when your investor showed up.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm excited about it. You know, I love to cook. Like I said, I can control everything in the kitchen, whereas I can't control everything in Mother Nature. So,
And it is pretty funny. Us as fishermen, we are control freaks.
yeah, man. You know, you would think that we would learn that we can't control everything, but
You
when we
think
think,
we would learn, but we don't.
yeah, we also think we can predict it. You know, that's the other part that's weird.
Well, you know, it's so funny because I've been doing this long enough where when I hear people starting to predict stuff,
Right.
I laugh.
Yeah.
I laugh. And now mind you, there's certain things I do predict. Like once a fish shows up and you tease him a certain way, this is where he's going to show up to eat the bait.
Right. But you've seen it 1,000 times.
Because they all act the same way.
Right.
But it's a cold front. They're going to definitely snap, or we're going to do this because it's definitely, man.
Or redfish don't bite on the full moon. Like, man, you know how many times? First of all, I would have to take every full moon off, right? And how many times I've been on a full moon and they bit, and how many times I've been on a new moon and they didn't bit, which is the exact opposite.
Exactly.
If I were to write a book, I would call it Redfish, Deer, and Women. And every time you think you got them figured out, think again.
I'll tell you what, it's one thing I can guarantee you is if you do take off every full moon and not fish, you'll never catch a fish.
Exactly.
That's the only thing I can guarantee you. So you might as well go fishing. You got a better chance of catching one while you're out there than sitting at home wishing.
Yes, that's it. You can't know if you don't go.
Just go fishing. You ain't gonna catch them sitting at the dock.
You can't win it if you ain't in it.
Amen. I just go fishing. Just go. You'll catch them. And if you don't, at least it's another day on the water.
That you learn something.
You're gonna learn something. It might be you better tighten up all your bolts on your mount. Whatever you learn, you're gonna learn.
Yep.
You know, or you're gonna learn how to take off a fire extinguisher.
Correct.
So you don't have to rip off the cedar.
Right. Or just not fasten it on there
as tight. You know, but you're going to learn something. I mean, there's something to be said about repetition. You go over it day and night and day. And I know when I've taught people how to fish, I always make them shag all the weed and change their baits. And it's like, man, why are you making me do this? You know, isn't that what the deckhand's for?
You're more efficient at everything.
Well, you also learn how to hold the rod properly. You learn how to handle the rod and reel without having to look at the rod and reel. So you can look at your bait. So when that fish does come up and eat it, you see the bite.
Right.
It's one of the things. I'm very comfortable around a reel, but it's also because of the fact that in a calendar year, I have that reel in my hand probably 300 days a year.
Right.
Whether it's to wash it, put line on it, shagging weed, whatever. The reel's always in your hand. So when it comes time to operate it with a fish, you know it. Exactly. You don't have to look at it. You know how to turn on the clicker. You know how to turn off the clicker. You know how to put it in free spool. And that's something that you can't teach somebody. You actually have to go through the steps.
Right.
You have to go through the steps.
There's a difference in knowing how to do something and being proficient at it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like learning how to tie a bimini twist or any other knot. You know, you can learn how to tie it, but until you tie 1,000 of them, you're not gonna be able to tie them while you're looking at something else and tie them fast and tie them correctly.
It's like me typing.
Yeah, which
which it looks like, for me, it looks like a rooster picking up corn. I'm just not good. Now I can use the 3 fingers, but that's it. There's no rhyme. And I got to look at my keyboard.
It's bad when I do stuff on my phone instead of on my $5,000 Apple laptop, because I'm more proficient at texting than I am typing.
Kind of crazy, isn't it?
It's nuts. And,
It's
my fault.
listen,
Even though I can send text messages on my laptop, if I sat here as much as I'm on that phone,
if I could hold my keyboard like this and use 2 thumbs,
right,
I'd be a champ.
Exactly.
I'd be a champ.
Yep.
Because I do it on my phone.
Yep.
So
you'll figure that out.
Is there anything else that we missed? I'm glad you brought up the nonprofit. I'm glad you brought it up. I'd like to, once you get it up and running, we can maybe do something, whether it be shoot some videos or put on an event or something like that, something to that nature.
Put on events now. I mean, I can come cook for you no matter what. Now I can feed up to 200 people off of that smoker, and it's good food too. Like I'm saying, it's not just because I'm on a smoker. I still bring everything we need to make it a 5-star meal.
I ain't gonna knock you, and I've got a couple of things going on right now that could be very, very interesting for you. Cool. So we'll talk about it after we get off the air because we haven't announced them yet. So, but anyway, Jamie, don't hang up. But we're gonna sign off here. I want to say thank you so much for taking your time, and I knew you weren't doing anything because you posted it up on social media. So I'm like, hey, why don't you jump on the podcast with me?
My phone's today.
Well, and here's a good thing. Anytime you want, the great thing about doing it like this remotely, you don't have to fly to Florida. You can just call me up or text me and say, hey, what are you doing? And I have everything set up. I mean, literally from the moment somebody comes available to online, we can do it in a matter of 15 minutes.
That's awesome.
And I've done it a couple of times where somebody calls me up, hey man, we got this new thing. When can we put it out? And I'm like, well, let's do it right now. Why wait? Why make a plan? I'm definitely one of those guys. Why make a plan to make a plan? Right. Let's just do it. And I've done that before and I've failed, and I've done that before and it's worked. You talk about opportunity and luck. And I remember one time I put on a tournament where I put out the press release first before I did anything else. Where's the website? I don't know. Where's this? I don't know. They're like, what? I'm like, I'm just lighting a fire under my ass so I can do it. Yeah. I'm going to do it. And I did it, and I did it for 3 years. And it's funny because since then I've seen somebody grab that idea and they changed it a little bit and they were able to make it work, which I'm very happy for it.
Right.
It was just an idea I had, and sometimes they work, and that's the fun part. I mean, I was listening to a podcast earlier this morning. It's like a game. Just try it. Just do it. See what happens. It's like fishing. I'm going to try this lure. What's the worst?
Right back where you were.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be. It's like what you said. Don't be afraid. Just go do it. Yeah. And I get it. Sometimes you get afraid of failing or not getting the outcome that you want. Right. At least for me, I always say failing is when I fall and I don't get back up. Right. I'm going to fall. You're always going to fall. You're going to skin your knees. You're going to drive a boat and you're going to hit the dock. There's things that happen. Yeah. But as long as you can get back up, do it again.
Exactly. Don't go any faster than you're willing to crash.
I learned that. My first boat captain taught me that.
Yeah, but it applies to everything, though.
But it totally does. How head over heels do you want to get into something that you can't pull back? You know,
you can do it all the way without just crushing yourself. If you fail.
Yeah, exactly.
Like nobody puts every dime they have in the stock market for the first time.
No.
Nobody goes in, puts all their money. You don't refinance a house and buy Bitcoin today.
No.
Maybe today.
Yeah, I think I saw something that it went up really high.
Yesterday it went up like 15%.
Here's my thing. I don't understand enough of it to mess around. I don't like I'm not a gambler, even though every day I go out fishing is a bit of a gamble.
But you get paid regardless.
What's that?
You're getting paid regardless of the outcome.
Well, Some days I do, some days I don't. But what I'm talking about, at least I understand being out on the ocean. I understand boats. I understand there's a comfort level, and I'm not going to do something that I don't know enough about.
Well, even Warren Buffett said, one of the richest men in the world, he said, don't invest in anything you don't use on a daily basis, because if you believe in a product that much, you're not the only one.
Exactly.
And I don't understand Bitcoin at all, but when Elon Musk buys $1.5 billion of it,
You trust Elon?
the richest man in the world, yeah, or second richest man in the world, yeah.
It depends what day you ask. It could be richest, it could be second, but he's right up there.
He's right up there, yeah.
He's
I think he's second after Bezos now, but
it's funny because there was a week.
$100 billion level, nobody gives a shit if you're first or second.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. After a while, you know what? You can only buy so much. It's just at that point, it's just a measuring tool of success.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When you get to the point where you're like, all right, I'm going to build a spaceship.
No. Hold on a second. You're not. It's one thing that I'm going to build a spaceship.
Well, yeah, I'm going to build a fleet of NASA regulated spaceships.
A fleet. That's the difference. There's a difference between saying, you know what, I'm going to build a house and I'm going to build a community.
Right.
And that to me is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm not just going to build one. I'm going to build a bunch of them.
You're right. It's a whole next level.
Have you driven in a Tesla yet?
I rode in one. One of the handlers that we had out in LA for MasterChef took me to get a prescription. I actually had the flu while I was out there. Worst sickness I've ever been in my life. And I didn't get the flu shot that year. And I know that's why because I had two roommates that got the flu also, and they were barely sick. And I said, I'll never not have the flu shot again after that. But anyway, he took me to get a prescription Tamiflu in a Tesla. I wasn't really impressed. And then when he told me, he has to sometimes sit for 30 minutes, wait on it to charge, that whole aspect of it just doesn't impress me. But I'm also like, I'll drive for 12 hours at a time, but 24 hours towing a boat to Texas for a tournament. I can't do that on an electric car.
Well, I rode in one once. It's like an iPhone. You're driving an iPhone. What I was very impressed with was the guy that was driving it says, "Want to see how fast this thing goes?"
That did impress me. Yeah.
It wasn't just how fast it goes; it's how fast it gets to going that fast.
Right.
I mean, he's
2.4 seconds, 0 to 60.
Yeah, there's no delay. There's no like. It's just you push it down, you go.
Yeah. Like golf cart.
Exactly. It's just like a golf cart.
Like a new golf cart, not an old one. It's like
no. It's like a brand new one, and it had the whole screen, and it had the self-driving. I wasn't too keen on the self-driving when he's like, "Watch this." And he just takes his hands off the wheel. I'm like, "Hey man, I saw iRobot. Put your hands back on the wheel."
Yeah, that scares me. People get too comfortable with that,
Yeah, I wasn't too keen on it. I wasn't too keen on, but it's that comfort level. It's something new to us.
A lot of people would rather the car drive itself than the people drive. If you're going to be texting and doing all kind of stuff, I'd rather you just let the car drive.
Yeah,
crashing or probably less than you crashing if you're doing all that other stuff.
Well, again, it goes back to give it a couple years of practice. Right. I don't know how I feel about somebody just sent me those. Have you seen those dog robots?
No. I mean, I've seen them, but I haven't.
I haven't seen them in person, but I mean, have you seen the videos of them where they can pick stuff up and they can move things? And, after a while, I mean, some of this stuff, like I like to drive.
Right.
I like to drive. I like, I have somebody that's coming to go fishing, sword fishing tomorrow. Part of me going sword fishing is I'm going to go pick up my friend Tarzan. I don't know if you've seen him on social media. He's 11 years old. So his mom calls me up. He's like, hey, he's got invited to go sword fishing. They live up 2 hours north of me. And he got invited to go out to Lighthouse Point, which is an hour south of me. And his mom's like, hey, can I meet you halfway? And I'm like, sure. And I don't mind. I don't mind driving an hour because I'm going to put a podcast on and I'm going to listen and I'm going to chill out. And that's what I do. Or I'm going to make a phone call for an hour. Right. I went up to Savannah once to go shoot some videos at Release Marine. And from here to Savannah is about 8 hours. Maybe I'm confused. Maybe it's 8 hours to Charleston and 6 hours to Savannah.
8 hours to hear you.
Yeah. And anyway, one way or another, I left and I had rented a car with Bluetooth because my truck at the time didn't have Bluetooth. And I literally, by the time I got to Savannah, I had no voice. I talked 6 hours straight.
I've actually done podcasts while I'm in the truck.
Have you?
Yeah.
I haven't done a podcast while I was driving, but I have done a couple of radio call-ins where people call me up while I'm driving. I did one on a treadmill in the gym. I got a phone call. Hey, tell us about all the fishing. And yeah, so we talked about fishing and walk and talk and chew gum, the whole 9 yards. I can do it. I'm multitasking.
Right. Man of many hats, master of none, right?
Absolutely. Actually, the only thing I might be a master at is talking.
There you go.
I can talk. It's almost, I have a couple of friends that they talk just as much as I do. And they're like, oh, I better let you go. We've been on for 2 hours. You can talk. I'm like, listen here, man. I would not throw any rocks in that glass house you're living in.
Right.
I have no problem. I'll live up to the fact that I can talk forever. But
right.
don't be making this 2-hour phone call my fault.
Right.
Because it takes 2 to tango here.
That's it.
And really, for me, that's what fishing's all about. I mean, I always tell everybody there's a difference between fishing and catching. Catching is reeling in the fish. Fishing is the time you spend with your friends and family.
Right.
You sit there, you bullshit, you talk, you make fun of it. It goes back to the practical. That's why fishermen are great practical jokers.
You come up with stuff to do when you get out of the dock.
Yeah, exactly. You start thinking about it. Some of my best business ideas have come while I'm trolling. Somebody's not talking to me and I'm just looking into the ocean and looking at my spread. And it's like, I should try that, and then you throw it up on social media, see what happens. And next thing you know, it gets implemented.
I know. You're like, wait a minute, I wasn't expecting that.
Don't say anything that you don't want me to implement at some time. I'll be trying it. Or worse yet, don't say you want to try something and sit on it for 2 years. Then I'm going to call you up. Hey, you still going to do that idea? Well, listen, I'm going to do it. Okay.
I want to run with it. Somebody's got to run with it.
And I'm always one of those. Somebody called me up. They wanted me to see something. And I'm like, whoa, before you show me that, I need to let you know that I'm doing something very similar. So I don't want you to show me and say, I stole an idea. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm doing it. And you can change your mind and I'm not going to,
right.
I'm not going to feel bad. I just don't ever want somebody to say, oh, that was my idea.
Right.
Yeah. Because we all sit around while we're fishing, come up with ideas.
Oh yeah.
And
are you going to follow through? That's the difference.
And listen, I remember I had an idea that I sat on for 1.5 years, maybe even 2 years. And then I had somebody call me up saying they wanted to talk to me. And I'm like, oh shit, they found out my idea. They're doing it. And I talked to them and they didn't, but that was enough to scare me to say, okay, I need to do it.
Right.
They got my idea. I need to do it.
Yeah.
And stop waiting. What are you waiting for?
Sit, man. Just gotta jump.
Just jump. So, all righty. Everybody, thank you so much, Jamie. Just hold on right there. And again, I appreciate you listening here to the No BS World Tour, coming at you on every single different platform you can imagine: iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, Alexa Play, which is my favorite. So, Alexa, play Fly Navarro's No BS. Watch what happens. All right, people.